everyone, and welcome to this episode of Montana's Multipreneurs. We're your hosts, Nina and Mackenzie, and we're so glad to have you here today. Especially excited to have a special guest with us here today, Michelle Cummings, entrepreneur extraordinaire, I like to call her. She's the owner of multiple businesses, three of which I know she may even have more: Personify Leadership, Training Wheels, and she's the author of a book called The Real Sisters. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Well, great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Michelle, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your businesses, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, you know what? I started my first company 26 years ago at the date of this recording. Didn't know I was going to be a serial entrepreneur at the time, but I was pretty young when I started my first company, and Training Wheels is the name of my first company, and we're an experiential team building and team development company. I started that job when I couldn't find one that I really liked, so I made one up. So far, 26 years later, it's still working for me. So that's Training Wheels. Then about 13-ish years ago, I started Personify Leadership, which is an experiential leadership development company. And I co-founded that with a business partner. And she actually found me through Training Wheels and brought me into her. She was internal at an organization at the time and had designed a leadership course internally at her organization, and then brought me in at Training Wheels to kind of pop in some experiential activities to really bring the learning to life. And at the time, we didn't know it, but that was kind of the first iteration of our leadership course, now called Personify Leadership. So when she left that organization, then that's when we started Personify. And now we have multiple courses, and we've been doing it now for 13 years. And then somewhere in that time period, I decided to write a novel, just something completely different from my normal, regular, everyday work life. And I fell in love with just creating characters and writing believable, conversational language and a storyline and all of those things. So that came out, the book came out in 2017. I think I started writing it in 2010. Because it's not my full-time gig, it was always that back burner, work on it when I had a little extra free time, or if my energy just kind of pointed me that direction. So the Real Sisters has been around since 2017. So those are my three very active and current companies. And then another little side thing that I also do is that I'm a fifth generation farmer. And so my family owns farm ground, and we do cash crop of wheat, corn, barley, milo, and oats in the great state of Kansas. And so that is an active, ongoing part of my life as well. That is very behind the scenes, but still a part of what I do.
That's awesome. So you juggle multiple ventures. How do you prioritize things, and what is the biggest challenge for you?
Time management is always the biggest challenge. When you have multiple interests in multiple companies, time is always the biggest issue. Where do you spend your energy? Where do you spend your time? And I will say, of my two truly active companies that I am in and out of the work week, Monday through Friday mostly, that's where I spend most of my business hours, toggling in between the two. That can get really challenging. I will say both of them have different busy periods. So, which is nice, because then I can kind of reserve my calendar time for one versus the other when needed. But I have two different teams. I have a team meeting on Monday for Training Wheels, and I have a team meeting on Tuesdays for Personify, and then all the other trainings. And if I'm facilitating in the classroom, then those take priority. Or if I'm presenting and keynoting at a conference, then it's kind of just when the calendar fills. It can fill for Training Wheels, or it can fill for Personify. And then I work all my writing and stuff like that around those presentation and facilitation times.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like it's kind of like all of an organic flow. They all kind of work together well, cohesive. Is there been anything that has surprised you with this entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something surprising. I mean, when I was 27 when I started my first company, so I was really young. And, at the time, there was a lot of things I didn't know about how to run a company. And I don't have a business background. My bachelor's degree is in psychology, and my master's degree is in experiential education. So I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, things that were surprising along the way. I think I first assumed that, like, you start a company and then you start working with clients and then it just starts working. I think something that surprised me early on was as soon as you let other people start marketing and selling your stuff, your business will grow exponentially. And then if you also write a book, my first book came out in 2004, and I saw market growth in training wheels evolution after I wrote a book and became an expert in the experiential field. That's when I really saw a lot of new clients, new opportunities, new leads come in. So it surprised me. I didn't think that that would be the catalyst to make that happen. And now I don't know if it has quite the same effect. It seems like now everybody writes a book, which is a great thing because and writing a book is very hard, but it seems like that's what a lot of people do, and that does help propel. It's a great business card, if you will. This is who we're about, what we do, and things like that. So I do encourage people to write a book or author a course or do something like that to promote your business and what you do.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because we've talked about, do we start doing blogs, or this podcast kind of stemmed from that? How do we market ourselves in a different way?
Podcasting, I think, is absolutely a new way to get your voice out there really organically. And if you're new to writing, if you've not ever written a book before, and writing is maybe not, you're not a trained writer or a skilled writer, or if it's just something you're like, oh, I want to try this out, then blogs are definitely a great way to do that, because then you can share it out on your social media and things like that, and get your voice out there. You could also contact whatever trade associations are in your field. Then they often are looking for articles to post out to their members and things like that. They often will sometimes have their own blog posts and research articles or just news articles or things like that. That's another area where you can get your voice out with a little bit wider reach, and cast that net a little bit further out than what your own initial contacts are.
So, Michelle, that first book you wrote, that was a technical facilitation manual?
Yeah, my first several books through Training Wheels are all like team building activity books. They're kind of how-to books. And at the time, my first book is called A Teachable Moment, and it has over 120 different activities for reflection, debriefing, reviewing after the team building exercise has happened. And at the time, there was no real book out there like that at all. So being a little bit novel, if you will, or unique, I guess, then it really catapulted. And it's a real struggle area for facilitators. I think that's also something to consider, is that find a struggle area for whatever your business is, or solving a need that your clients have, some sort of struggle that they have. And that's a great topic area to write a blog post or a need or a book on, or something like that. And that will pique their interest if it's something that they too are struggling with.
Fantastic.
Great advice.
That's great. Yeah, I just want to make that distinction. That wasn't the Real Sisters.
Right. The Real Sisters. Yeah. That one, it's so like novel, really. It's so very far different from what my normal work week and my normal professional life is. And really how the novel came about was, I'm in a book club, and my group of girlfriends, we get together once a month. We call it Life Club more than book club, because sometimes we don't actually get around to talking about the book. But there was one particular, we also have a no guilt book club yeah, you don't have to read the book. You could still come to book club, right? But if you do show up, you're going to find out the ending to whatever the book is that they read, because that's what you do. So I went to book club this one month, and truth be told, I did not read the book that month. It was a busy month. And honestly, it didn't sound like a book that I would really enjoy. So anyway, I show up, and my friend Melanie, she goes, oh my gosh, I have the biggest surprise. I went on to that book. The name of the book that month was The Friday Night Knitting Club by Kate Jacobs. And so truth be told, I didn't read the book that month, but I show up, and Melanie, one of my friends, she goes, oh my gosh, I have the biggest surprise. I went on to Kate Jacobs' website to download discussion questions for tonight. And there was a button on her website that said, click here if you want Kate to call your book club. So she goes, I pushed it, and she had our date and time available. So I signed up for it. So Kate Jacobs is calling us in about 30 minutes. I was like, now I felt like a total jerk for not reading her book. And so then she called us, and this was pre-Zoom, like video teleconferencing thing was really, the capabilities weren't there yet. So she just literally like called us our cell phone, and like we put her on speakerphone in the center of the table, and we all got to ask her questions and ask about her process and like learn how she created her characters. And I will tell you, I fell in love with everything that she said, everything that she did. And it was just a really magical night for me. I was like, and I know that I've always been a pretty good storyteller. And I know I'm a pretty good writer as well. So I went home from book club that night, and I told my husband, I'm like, what happened? I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to write a novel. And he was like, I'm sorry.
Another venture.
Like when are you going to find time to write write a novel? When, like what? And then a couple weeks go by and I just couldn't let it go. And then finally he was like, okay, let's go into inquiry. And that is our key phrase that we use whenever I need to brainstorm or brain dump or something out of my brain. I don't necessarily want his opinion, but I need to like just draw it out of me. So that art of inquiry that he does with me, and then vice versa, I do it with him, is whoever's the questioner, you can only ask questions. You cannot add your own, you can't make any statements, you can't add your own agenda or anything like that. So he just started peppering me with questions around, why do you want to write a novel? Who's your intended audience? When will you find the time? What do you want the book to do in the world? Like all of those types of questions. And then once I kind of identified some of those things, then he really started diving into like, well, what would you want to write about? Why that topic? What's the intent? Like all of those things. It's such a fabulous process. So through that, it ended up being a 3-hour inquiry session. And at the end of those 3 hours, I had selected the genre, the name of the book. I picked 5 characters, named them, and I hadn't even picked up a fly rod yet. So I chose fly fishing as the genre of the book because one of the things I really wanted the book to do in the world is I wanted to craft some sort of story that was an adventurous outdoor sport of some sort, because I think the outdoors is the absolute best teacher. And so I thought one of my goals for the book was to try to craft a story that would hit the everyday book club market, the everyday woman or man, I don't care, but everyday woman in theory that would, once she read this story, it would entice her to maybe step outside of her day-to-day routine and try something new in the outdoors. So I thought if I'm going to ask other women to do it, I have to do it first. So I picked an entire genre, fly fishing, and that was something that I had never done before because I wanted to write from the perspective of a beginner, because that's when all your true raw emotions are there, because I knew I would suck at it. And that's where you like
Grow the most.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where one of the characters in the book, she falls into the group accidentally. They teach her how to fly fish, all those things. So that's why I chose fly fishing, and then just kind of started the journey of writing and fishing. It's one of my favorite life accomplishments and journeys that I've done for myself in my career.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michelle. That is so great to hear, and I can't wait to hear more about that. So transitioning a little bit on the leadership and growth side of things. So I was telling Mac before we got started today, you and I did meet probably about 13 years ago, I think we figured out.
Yeah, I think so.
Personified leadership was still kind of in the newer stage. Your book had not been published yet, The Real Sisters. And of course, Training Wheels was established, but I'd like to transition a little bit and find out, obviously, personified leadership talks a lot about leadership skills, the 8 core competencies of effective leaders. Can you share with us those skills that you draw on helps you be successful in your various businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So personified leadership in those 8 core competencies of effective leadership, we metaphorically tied all 8 of those skills to a part of the body. So we start with the heart of a leader and talk about how do you build trust and respect with those that you lead? How do you lead with intention? And, and that right there, I think from an entrepreneurial point of view is really a great place for all entrepreneurs to start with the heart and what's your intent, and really getting clear on what your intent is. Like, what do you want to do in the world? Kind of like I just described with the Real Sisters. That's really what I was doing in that inquiry process as well, is what do you want your business to do in the world? Who's your intended audience? Like all of those same questions that drew a novel out of me is the same. It's actually the same process that I use for any new venture, or even in my current businesses. Like at Personify, I just designed a new course. And so we went through that same process. Like, who's the intended audience? What do we want it to do for leaders? Like all of those things. Those are the same great questions that you're going to ask. And then from the heart, then we go to the mind and we talk about emotional resiliency. What are your stress triggers? How do they impact the way that you lead? And it's no different in being a solopreneur is not for the faint of heart. There are so many roller coaster up down days that you're going to have that, there's so many giant world things that you just cannot control, like the pandemic, the financial crisis, a government shutdown, like all of those things that happen. You've got to be prepared for those things. And that takes a lot of emotional and financial resiliency. So So those are all great things to plan. And then voice and ears of the leader are two more competencies where we talk about how do I deliver a message that really resonates with those who receive it. And then ears is how do I also be a true listener. And so if I relate that to being an entrepreneur, like you have to figure out what are ways that I communicate what my company does, what's my mission, what's my vision, all of those things. What is this going to do, and how are you going to communicate that to your prospective clients as well as your existing clients? And then listening to their needs and then their pain points and all of those different things so that you can try to create solutions that really will create an impact or a difference for them. And then from there, in the hands of a leader, we talk about effective delegation and how to provide direction and support. So that one might be a little bit more unique to our course. But if you think about that, how do your services support your clients or others and things like that? The feet of a leader is where we talk about walk the talk and how to hold ourselves and others accountable. So accountability is a great thing for leaders in businesses as well. People want to do business with those that they have high trust in, that they can trust are going to walk the talk and deliver products and services that they've promised. So that's important. The spine of a leader is where we talk about courageous conversations and how to say and do the hard things. As a solopreneur, there are so many times you're going to have true spine and true courage to say and do the hard things that it requires of you as an entrepreneur. And then the eyes is all around vision and setting goals, and a process that we use at both Training Wheels and at Personify that I highly recommend to solopreneurs is the EOS traction book and process. EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it is fantastic. We did it with both Personify and Training Wheels. Set a 10-year goals, and then back up to 3-year goals, then 1-year goals, then quarterly goals, and then assigning tasks or rocks to people. That has been such an amazing process for both companies to have long-term vision within also short-term goals in order to, where you need to be on track in order to reach your long-term goals. So that's kind of Personify and then relating it to just any solo entrepreneur.
Excellent. So actually talking about the EOS system, thanks for bringing that up because I had talked with Paul. I'm not sure what title Paul holds.
Paul is our COO at both Personify and Training.
Right. So I had talked with him about it for a plan for a client of mine on one of my businesses. And one of the EOS implementers, actually, there's one here in town locally, but Paul had shared with me that you guys didn't use a consultant for that. You guys did it yourself, the two of you.
That's correct. Yes, Paul has a business background and a previous company that he owned, he did business planning and whatnot for organizations. So he had a lot of that, and we just had never done it for my companies before. So we decided he read the book. He is a connoisseur of business books. So I'm very fortunate that I have him on my team. So anyway, so he played the role of the integrator, and I'm the visionary. He's the integrator, and and
you need that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You need.
I think he refers to himself as he's the dream killer.
He is the dream killer. Our less professional names are I'm the dreamer, he's the dream killer, and he puts process to my vision and my dreams, and it's just and it's absolutely necessary and needed in any business for sure.
What was interesting is I had met the EOS implementer here before. Paul had mentioned that to me. The book is called Traction. I have a copy around somewhere. So it was just when he mentioned it, I ran downstairs and said, "Is this the book you're talking about?"
Yeah.
So that's exactly the book.
That's good.
Really helpful to know that small entrepreneurs, that you guys are small, but for my client, they were smaller and just starting out. And so recommended that, this is bite-sized. You can do this yourself without having to hire a bunch of consultants to come in and help you with that.
Yeah. And what I love about it, we just last week, we did our quarterly, it's a little bit once a quarter, you have a little bit longer team meeting to set your goals for that next quarter, review what you did or didn't accomplish in the previous quarter. What do we want to accomplish? And then it just financial benchmarking, like all of those things are just, it's so nice to have all of it wrapped up and, there's a structure and process to it. And it just helps that everybody knows what everybody else is doing in the organization as well. What are you working on? What end goal is it actually tracking towards? And so it's just really helpful. And I will say though, the other nice thing about setting a goal and then like it needs to be finished by the end of the quarter or whatever is that so much work gets done in that last 2 weeks or so of the quarter because you want to accomplish your goals. And so that little bit of pressure is actually a good thing for productivity to actually make sure things are getting accomplished and not just remaining on the back burner forever. So yeah, it's a fantastic process.
With juggling all that you do, you probably have pressures from everywhere on a given day. How do you switch gears or focus?
Yeah, definitely. I have to work in like time chunks for sure. And so if I want to stay in a creative process for a long period of time, I'll just block an entire half day. And then sometimes I don't come into the office on those days. I'll work from my home office. So that way I get really concentrated, uninterrupted time. So that's also really important to make sure that I still carve out that really, I mean, you have to have time for emails and new client calls. You have to take care of all of those. But man, when I need, I try to block that creative time in my calendar. And then I really try hard to just protect it. Because without it, then as the CEO of both companies and the visionary, if I'm doing the other things, I'm working in the company instead of on the company. And for entrepreneurs, that is important for you to make sure that you protect that creative time because the other stuff is going to be there. It will not go away. But losing your creativity time it's really it's a detriment to your company or companies because that's where the really good stuff happens that actually probably makes you unique from your competitors as well. Whatever your creative time is that you're putting into it, whether it's writing or creating a product or a course or like whatever it is, that's precious time. So try to protect it as much as you can.
I feel like I can relate to that too. It just keeps you inspired, able to look at it more from a 40K than being in it.
Yeah. And I will say when I do have that dedicated time, that's when I get all of the new stuff created, which then leads to financial results because then once you have your new stuff, then that's what you can sell out to your client base and whatnot. So, you know, that's why it's critical that you protect that time as much as process and block it in your calendar. Make sure that you're doing it. Otherwise, you'll lose your motivation and your internal drive to actually get it done. And then it becomes a burden rather than that thing that you want to do. It's more that as soon as it's something you have to do instead of what you want to do, that's where the mind shift can start to happen. And it's not as much fun or the pressure just builds and it's too much pressure rather than the right amount of pressure to keep you productive.
So, Michelle, can you share a little bit? You talked about your team and getting together, but what about outside the team? A little bit about kind of community and collaboration and mentorship. How does that integrate in with your businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do go to one conference every year that is just for me to work on my own professional development. Now, one and maybe two if possible. And those are still like professional time. It's still that to where I'm like using it to make the businesses better or to get new ideas or to see what some of my competitors are doing or things like that. So I found a couple communities that really help me grow as a human, as a person as well. So I think that's really important. And then I'm definitely involved in several social groups on LinkedIn as well as Facebook and things like that. So just to stay active in a more of a global community, the internet and those groups make it that much easier to do that. So, and then just with my own internal, or I guess with a lot of my clients who are also trainers, I do have monthly support calls to where I can pop on and inspire them and then also share new things. But then at the same time, I can be a mentor to them. And then for myself, like having my own people that I reach out to on a regular basis when I'm struggling with something or I need to, popcorn some ideas off somebody. That's also important, and in the past I've had professional coaches as well. And so I also want to make a caveat for coaches. It doesn't always have to be someone that's more seasoned than you. I have found a lot of great insight from those that are younger than me as well, because their perspective and their viewpoint and their lens is just so different than mine. So when you do look for a coach or a community, don't always look for someone that's a little more seasoned than you. I sometimes will look throughout different generations because their lens is very different than mine.
And what about a coach that's not in your functional area that you're looking for, that maybe in something different? I mean, what's your tip
I
there?
think there's value in that, and then like if you are going to find, a life coach or, something like that, you just like you have to find someone that just really fits with you. So sometimes it might take a couple of introductory sessions in order to find the right fit, but find someone that actually pushes you a little bit. I think that's important.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I saw something the other day that talked about even networking, like get out of the networking, like for me, of just HR people, like go
Mhm.
out and network with builders and different industries.
Sometimes chambers are good for that because then you'll get people from, the chambers of commerce, because then you get people from your community that are in lots of different industries and fields and not just your own.
That's where we connected, Nina, is because we had started out as like a client relationship, but it evolved to thought partnership. And I think that is such a huge value for any solopreneur, entrepreneur, having someone in different perspective to weigh in on something, different facets of your business.
Absolutely. Well, lots of great tips. So, what's next for you, Michelle, and your businesses?
Yeah, thankfully to, traction, to a great team, to all of these things, we have so many really amazing things coming up. At Training Wheels, we've got a couple of books that I'm working on. For the last several years, I created a course in 2018 called Experiential Facilitation 101. And it was really just a course to teach how to, how to do experiential facilitation. And it's the course I wish existed when I first got into experiential facilitation. And I learned basically all of the lessons that I put into this course the hard way. So it's just your basic information. So we're working on the 202 course. And so just a little bit deeper. So that's exciting. We're going to start working on that and drafting that out. Hopefully that'll come out in 2026. And I've got a couple books in the works for Training Wheels. At Personify, we have so many amazing things happening. We just launched our deep dive program and course, which is the secondary course to our core program. Just last week, we just launched our new assessment tool, which is where leaders can take this online assessment and learn kind of as it's a self-assessment. So you're self-evaluating where your skills are at in all 8 of the competencies that I described a little bit ago. And then you get a report, you get your assessment, and then it shows you where your strengths are and where your development areas are. So that's where I'm so excited to have all the data coming in from that. We've already had thousands of leaders take it all around the world, and it's amazing, like just to see the pain points globally of what leaders are experiencing around the world. So I could not be more excited about that. And then I have a book for Personify coming out. I hope to have it done by the end of this year, and it'll be called Leadership Personified. And it is all the skills that we teach in our core program, plus case studies and great examples of clients and leaders around the world that personify those different 8 competencies. And then Real Sisters. So I mentioned it came out in 2017. And then a couple years ago, I was contacted by a screenplay writer. She found the book and read it cover to cover and called me immediately and asked if I'd be interested in having it be turned into a screenplay. And I was like, let me think about it. Yes. Right. Like, and I think that's every author's dream, is to have it be turned into a screenplay with the hopes of it being turned into a film. So the screenplay is finished. We are now currently shopping it, around to different production companies, and no one has said yes to it yet. But that just adds a little pressure. We got to keep at it. I mean, we've been told no a lot, but at the same time, that I got told no a lot on when I was getting the Real Sisters book written. I got told no by a lot of different publishers, and then the book did get published. So anyway, that it would be like the most exciting, like crazy, life-altering thing that would happen is if we get a production house to say yes to our film, and then I don't know how I'll manage my life at that point, but it'll be a great problem to have.
Kind of behind the scenes, and we don't have to name names, but do you have actresses and actors in mind for your
Absolutely. Yeah. We have this whole beautiful pitch deck that we have sent out, and we've suggested 3 different actresses that could play each one of the 5 women in the book. And I have my preferred favorites, but yeah, if we were to get any of the, I guess, 15 that we've suggested, it would be an absolute blockbuster for sure. So that's kind of exciting. Yeah.
It's amazing. So What advice would you give for someone who wants to start a business when they're hearing the no's, they're kind of in that not rejection phase, but they're hearing that more often times than not? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would every time I have a sales call with our external trainers or our trainers that are certified in the Personify program, we always tell them just expect you're going to hear no 90% of the time. You're going to hear a lot of no's. And that can be disheartening, but just know that as soon as you find those people that say yes, then find the other people that are like those people. So another great book we read one time was the blue ocean theory. And that is another great concept. As soon as you find, a couple clients that are kind of like one another, then go to the conference. They're all going to have a trade conference or an association that tailor to that. So go there instead of going to the HR conference where everybody goes. Now I still go to those. But I also will go to industry specific conferences because those are the people that have said yes. And you've got amazing stories already to tell about that particular field, and you can already speak their language. So that's always one tip I give. Another tip I always give, if you are truly new and just starting out, go and have a sit down relationship with your banker. Finances is just a part of being an entrepreneur, and you need to have a personal relationship with your banker because the more they get to know you, the more they will say yes to you. And that is always that's something that I came from a very small farming community when I grew up. And like in this small farming community, everybody knew my family, they knew my parents, they knew my grandparents, they knew my great grandparents. So that was actually a real benefit to me when I first got started. But then when I moved to Denver, I'm a nobody out here. I don't have any extended family and whatnot. So going in face to face, meeting them and really explaining your mission, your vision, your passion, your like the whole intent and what you want to do it'll excite them, and face to face is the way to do it. They get so many applications online every single day that are faceless without true passion. So go have a personal conversation with your banking institution.
Relationships are so important.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I guess one final question, just a fun one. What is something about you most people wouldn't know that you want to share with us? Fun fact, if you will.
Fun fact. I am definitely a risk taker in my life. Also, you can't be risk adverse, I think, and be an entrepreneur because there are a lot of risks that you have to take. But even before I owned my own companies, I was on a skydiving team when I was in college. So risk is definitely something I'm not scared of. Yeah, I'm also I was a fire baton twirler in high school as well. So I could twirl fire and I was a skydiver. So those are two fun facts.
Fantastic. Oh, well. I've known you over 13 years in various capacities.
I had to think about when you sent me the question to a fun fact when I was like, what would I share?
Great. Well, I think that's all we have today. Michelle, this has been such a pleasure visiting with you. We really appreciate your time. Your tips are so helpful. And actually, I'm telling you myself, I've got some key takeaways. Thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Michelle, it was great to meet you.